The Dance of Shadows. In the mountain village of Metzevo, the feast of Saints Peter and Paul was always marked with a dance in the square. The men wore their crisp white pleated skirts that gleam like snow under torchlight, and the women donned embroidered black dresses, their red headscarves bright against the night. But this year, the festival fell on a night when the moon hid behind thick clouds, and the air carried a weight that made even the goats bleat nervously. Eleni, the baker's daughter, was chosen to carry the ancestral garment, an heirloom blouse stitched with golden thread, said to have been woven by the village's first women hundreds of years ago. As they slipped it over her arms, the fabric felt cool, almost damp, and the thread seemed to pulse faintly under her skin. The old women clucked with approval, murmuring prayers, their faces unreadable. The music began. Spiraling through the night, dancers linked hands in the circle, moving in slow, deliberate steps across the stones. Eleni joined in, her slippers sliding easily as though the blouse were guiding her. The skirts of the men fluttered like pale wings. The women's scarves rippled like blood in the water. As the rhythm quickened, Eleni felt the blouse tightening, threads digging into her flesh. Her breaths came shorter, her steps no longer her own. She tried to pull away, but her hands would not unclasp from the chain. When she looked around, she saw that the dancers' faces were shifting. Eyes sank into hollow sockets, mouths twisted in rictus smiles. Their clothing no longer seemed festive, but funeral, stiff with centuries of sweat and soil. The circle spun faster. Eleni stumbled but could not fall. The dancers held her upright, dragging her with them. The torches hissed, their flames shrinking as shadows lengthened. She caught sight of her reflection in a window and nearly screamed. The golden blouse had fused into her skin, its embroidery crawling up her neck like veins of fire. Her face was no longer her own. It was the face of a pale, hollowed-eyed woman she did not recognize. The music grew shrill, no longer played by human hands. Bones clicked, sandals scraped stone, and the circle tightened until Eleni's chest was crushed between shoulders that smelled of earth and grave mold. Then she understood. The dance was not for the saints. It was for the dead. Each year, the village clothed the living girl in the blouse, binding her spirit to the circle so the ancestors could join the living once more. As her screams dissolved into the song, the old woman nodded solemnly. The dance would continue, as it always had, until the blouse found another body to wear. The woman with the serpent crown. The tourist brochures never mentioned the ruins beyond the olive groves. Locals warned visitors away with muttered prayers, but curiosity was stronger than fear. Nico, a university student from Athens, had heard whispers of a woman who lived among the toppled marble columns near Epirus. She was no myth, they said, no statue trapped in dusty museums, but flesh and blood, walking beneath the moon with a crown of writhing snakes. He laughed when he first heard it. Greece was full of stories, old gods stitched into every shadow. Still, one evening he slipped past the groves with his camera, determined to find the truth. The ruins seemed alive with whispers, Crickets stilled, cicadas choked onto silence. A chill crawled through the stones, then movement. She stepped from the shadows, her silhouette cutting sharp against the fractured temple wall. Black snakes uncoiled from her head, their tongues flicking at the air. Her eyes glowed a molten amber, brighter than fire, hungrier than the sun. Nico froze, breath stuck in his throat. "You should not have come," she said. Her voice was low, thick with centuries. Nico stumbled backward, lifting his shadow like a shield. The flash snapped once, bursting white against the night. When the image formed on the screen, his heart lurched, because he wasn't in the frame at all. Only her, only those terrible eyes. The snakes hissed as if laughing. "Do you think the curse died with the myths?" she whispered. "No, we endure. We always endure." He tried not to look, but her gaze pulled him like gravity. His limbs stiffened, heavy as stone. He screamed, or thought he did, but the sound turned brittle in his throat. His skin cracked like marble, gray spreading across his arms. The last thing he saw before his eyes hardened into lifeless glass was her smile, tragic, cruel, resigned. By dawn, another statue stood among the ruins, its expression forever twisted in horror. The villagers knew. They always knew. Children were told never to wander the columns, never to chase voices in the groves. But every few years, someone vanished. A tourist, a wanderer, a dreamer. And the broken temple grew more crowded with figures that had not been carved by mortal hands. Medusa lived still in the heart of Greece, hidden by time but never forgotten. Her black serpents slithered in the wind, her glowing eyes forever searching for the next soul foolish enough to believe she was just a story. The Cave of Hades. Tourists rarely wandered to the base of Cape Teneron, where jagged cliffs carved the horizon and the sea hissed with a sound like whispering voices. The locals spoke of the cave there, the neck of Hades, a place where Orpheus once descended and where souls still bled through the cracks of earth. They told travelers to leave it alone, but warnings are magnets for the curious. Elias came at dusk, a flashlight in his grip and bravado in his chest. The cave mouth gaped like a wound in the limestone, low and damp, exhaling a breath of salt and rot. His light slid over ancient inscriptions, scratched into the rock, faded prayers, desperate names. The deeper he went, the colder it grew, until the sea's voice was swallowed by silence. It wasn't silence, though. It was listening. Something moved within. The beam of his flashlight trembled across walls slick with mineral veins, like frozen tears. A sound rose, not wind, not water, but a low chorus, voices layering upon voices, as if the stone itself remembered every scream ever uttered. Elias staggered back, but his shoes found purchase only on bones, hundreds brittle and piled like offerings. The air thickened. His light flickered, then revealed shadows that were not his own. They crawled along the walls, thin and elongated, stretching like fingers desperate for warmth. The voices grew clearer, calling him by name, though he had told no one he was coming. Elias tried to run, but the passage twisted, spiraling downward instead of outward, dragging him into blackness. A smell rose with each step, burnt flesh, charred hair, iron-soaked soil. The flashlight sputtered one last time and died. He was blind, yet he saw. Figures crowding around him, eyeless, pale, their mouths stretched wide as wounds. Souls. One pressed close, its breath colder than the grave. The way back is closed, it rasped. All who enter feed the roots of the underworld. Elias screamed and stumbled forward, and the ground dissolved beneath his feet. He fell into a pit where the walls pulsed like flesh, stitched with veins glowing faint red. At the center yawned a chasm, deeper than sight, deeper than time. From within, something stirred, vast wings unfurling, a shadow heavier than death. The spirits hissed in unison. Hades waits. Clawing at the walls, Elias tried to climb, but the stone bled beneath his grip. Hands reached from the dark, countless hands, skeletal and rotted, dragging him downward. His last thought, before he was smothered beneath them, was that the sea outside had been warning him all along. Its endless hiss was the echo of the dead, urging him never to enter. The cave mouth still yawns, empty to the eye, but at night, if you press your ear to the stone, you can hear Elias still screaming, his voice braided into the eternal chorus. The Woman in Black. In the mountains of northern Greece, the old villages cling to stone and shadow. Their narrow streets twist like veins, their homes huddled against the wind. Children are warned not to wander at night, for there is someone who does. They call her the Woman in Black. No one knows when she first appeared, but the stories are always the same. A tall figure, draped in a black veil that swallows even the moonlight. She moves silently, her bare feet never stirring dust, her face never seen. Doors slam shut when she steps through the alleys. Dogs whine and tuck their tails. Anna had heard the tales all her life, but dismissed them as superstition. She returned to her grandmother's village one summer, restless and sleepless beneath the ancient rafters. On the third night, she rose and slipped outside, the cicadas screaming their chorus. The streets were deserted. Shadows pooled where the lamps had burned out. A wind cut through, carrying the faint smell of incense, though no church bells had rung. Then she saw her. The Woman in Black stood at the far end of the street, motionless. Anna froze, her pulse thundering. The figure lifted a hand, long and pale against the veil, and beckoned. Anna's body betrayed her. Her legs carried her forward, though her mind screamed to run. With each step, the woman retreated, always just out of reach, always gliding deeper into the labyrinth of streets. The sound of the cicadas died. leaving only silence. At last, they came to the village cemetery. The wrought iron gate yawned open. The woman slipped inside. Anna followed, breath shallow, heart in her throat. Among the leading crosses and crumbling tombs, the woman stepped before a grave so old its name was worn smooth. She turned. The veil lifted slightly, and Anna glimpsed a face pale as bone, lips parted in a grin too wide, too hungry. The woman's voice was not a voice at all, but a hiss of air through the leaves. "Stay with me." Cold fingers brushed Anna's cheek. She gasped and stumbled back, yet her feet tangled in unseen roots, and she crashed against the earth. The ground beneath her felt hollow, shifting, as if the soil itself wanted to swallow her. With a scream, she tore herself free and fled, not daring to look behind. She burst through the gate, through the streets, and into her grandmother's house, slamming the door. The next morning, villagers found footprints pressed into the dirt of the cemetery. 2 sets, one leading in, only one leading out. Anna never spoke of that night. But sometimes, when she walks the village paths at dusk, she feels another set of footsteps beside her, silent, patient, waiting. And in every darkened window, villagers still whisper, "The woman in black is walking tonight." The Black Procession. On the wind-battered coast of a small Greek isle, whispers carried across the tavernas and shuttered homes. They spoke of the ones in black. No one knew their names. No one knew their faces. Always cloaked head to toe, they drifted through the narrow streets of the island day and night, silent, unhurried, their black garments brushing the cobblestones like waves against stone. Some said they were mourners without graves. Others swore they were the drowned, returned from the sea. Yanis, the fisherman, claimed he saw them at dawn while hauling his nets. They walked the cliff path above him, 6 figures moving in perfect rhythm, their shadows stretching unnaturally long against the rising sun. He swore the gulls shrieked and dove into the water rather than fly over them. That night, Yanis did not return from the sea. His boat was found drifting, nets torn to ribbons. Children were told not to look at them. "If you meet their gaze," the old woman hissed, "they'll follow you home." Yet curiosity is a cruel sickness. Maria, a young bride, stood by her window one moonless night, waiting. When the procession passed beneath her balcony, she leaned too far forward, whispering a prayer. She swore one of them turned its hidden face up towards her. The next morning her bed was empty, the sheets damp with seawater. The people of the isle adapted. They locked their shutters by dusk, walked in silence at dawn. Weddings, baptisms, festivals, all faded. The black-clad figures moved among them without hindrance, as if the village itself belonged to them. Even in daylight, their presence leached warmth from the air, turning the sky from glittering blues to a lifeless gray. One winter evening, during a storm that rattled the island with thunder, a group of young men gathered their courage. Wine-fueled and desperate to break the curse, they followed the procession out of the village. torches in hand. The figures glided toward the cliffs, black fabric whipping in the salt wind. The men shouted, demanding names, demanding answers. Not one figure turned. When the villagers awoke the next morning, only the torches remained, stuck upright in the earth, still smoldering. The young men were gone. Now, no one speaks of defiance. The island has grown quieter with each passing year. Families leave when they can, abandoning houses that crumble against the relentless sea. For those who remain, survival is a simple rule. Do not watch, do not follow, do not ask. But the procession still roams. Some nights there are 6 of them, other nights 7. And sometimes, when a window is left unlatched or a door is not bolted, there are 8. The Marble Watchers. In the hills of Delphi, far from the usual tourist trails, there was a forgotten temple said to be dedicated to an unknown minor god, one whose name had been scraped from stone centuries ago. Only the locals whispered about it, warning hikers never to stray into the olive groves beyond the old Byzantine ruins. So of course Elena and her grad school archaeology group made it their destination. The air grew heavier the deeper they ventured. Trees leaned unnaturally toward the path, casting twisted shadows. Eventually they found it, a half-buried temple covered in moss and silence. The columns had eroded to jagged stumps, and the stone steps wept with black moss. But the statues stood pristine, untouched by time. They were tall, faceless marble figures, draped in flowing robes that clung like wet fabric to their impossibly lean forms. Their hands were outstretched, as if reaching or beckoning. Each statue stood in a different pose, one leaning against a broken pillar, another half kneeling near the altar, and one closest to the group with its head tilted in what almost looked like listening. "There's no record of this temple," Elena said, her voice trembling despite herself. "These statues aren't in any catalog." The sun dipped behind the hills. Shadows lengthened. The air grew cold. That night, they camped near the site, and that was the first mistake. Sometime past midnight, Darren, the group's photographer, woke to a scratching sound, like stone dragging across stone. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped out of his tent. The statues were gone. He whipped his light around. Panic pulsed through him. Then he saw them, faint, pale shapes, just beyond the tree line, partially hidden by branches. They had moved. He stumbled back, but something cold grabbed his ankle. He looked down. One of the statues was crawling towards him, its fingers now gnarled and cracked. Its featureless face was turned upward, listening. Darren's scream ripped through the night, but it was cut off with a wet, choking sound. The rest of the group found his tent shredded. No blood, no tracks, just his camera, cracked and broken, and dozens of photos he never took, each showing the statues closer and closer, until the last image was just a blur of marble fingers stretched toward the lens. Elena wanted to leave. The others insisted they stay, rationalizing it all as a prank or stress-induced madness. That night, it rained ash. By the third night, there were only 3 left. One by one, the statues hunted them. They never moved when watched. But blink, turn your back, or even close your eyes for a moment too long, and they'd be somewhere new. Closer. Always closer. They had faces now, not carved, not sculpted, but formed from stretched, warped marble, almost human. Each one mimicked the faces of the missing. Elena hid in the ruins, clutching a rusted bronze dagger she'd found buried near the altar. She had realized something terrible. These weren't statues. They were the punished, petrified souls of ancient worshippers who'd betrayed the forgotten god. And now, anyone who found the temple and looked upon them became part of their curse. The god was watching again, waking again, and had wanted new sentinels. Elena tried to flee, running through the olive grove, praying to gods she no longer believed in. Just as dawn broke, she reached the road. A farmer found her babbling and covered in scratches. The police chalked it up to trauma. She was taken home, safe. A month later, she started noticing the statues, not in Delphi, in her city, in parks, museums, gardens, watching, always watching. Always one more than she remembered being there before. And every time she passed a mirror, her reflection moved a fraction too late. She was changing. Marble was growing beneath her skin. The god had chosen her. Soon, she would join the others, forever watching, forever still, forever listening. The Secrets of the Greek UnderGods. At the Museum of Natural History, that's connected to Hearst University, the occult section is being filled, thanks in part to their increasingly popular Professor Vincent Ravenscroft. From the sands of Egypt to the mountains of Mexico and the frozen tundra of the Arctic, he has procured rare pieces of the occult, items that had only been dreamed of until he acquired them. He has become more and more popular with each discovery he's uncovered. Tips and rumors arrive at his office of Leeds about the next rare occult items, and with his enjoyment of the spotlight and wanting to increase the museum's catalog, he's only too ready to listen. 2 parcels, along with a report for each, have caught his eye. First, a parcel containing clues of the whereabouts of one of England's most notorious serial killers, the Prowler's occult items. The Prowler was a heavy practitioner in the occult. Those were the motives for his slayings. He collected parts from each of his victims so he could construct a vessel to summon a demon. He is rumored to have had a secret room hidden inside his chambers at Burlington Manor, his ancestral estate. Inside that secret chamber is said to hold quite the impressive library, filled with books on the occult, books that are rare, some even that only exist in rumor and legend, books on witchcraft and demonology, books that are bound in human skin. But the book rumored in his collection that's a must for any follower of the occult, any expert on demonology, any explorer or artifact finder, any museum, anyone like Professor Ravenscroft. And that's one of the books of the 3, a trilogy of novellas said to be written by the hand of the demon god of shit himself, Stoolzabub. The Book of the Stool, which they are called amongst collectors and fellow colleagues, would be quite the addition to the museum. Also, inside the secret chamber is said to contain the Prowler's top hat and cloak. To have these items would also be a prized addition to the museum's collection. The second parcel that caught Professor Ravenscroft's eye was a dossier on items and the rumored location of a cave, containing artifacts belonging to the ancient Greek UnderGods, ancient Greces, gods of the occult, seldom mentioned, but they are the exact same as the known ancient gods of Greece, just slightly different, with different names. Also within the parcel are maps claiming to show the location of the lost city of Craplandis. Also the location, buried within a cave, the steps leading to Mount Poulimpus. Both parcels intrigued Professor Ravenscroft, and both would be acquired, but the professor decided the Greece expedition would take precedent first. The Prowler's relics would have to wait. Professor Ravenscroft began with assembling his team, usually an easy task, but with the demise of both of his previous teams on his last two expeditions, it took a little more convincing with the help of his checkbook, and promises of their names being mentioned in any articles relating to their Greece findings. With the team assembled and their equipment secured, they were on the first flight to Greece they could charter. Once they arrived, the secret caves of the UnderGods were first on the list, nestled on the borders of Macedonia and Thessaly. It took a couple of days, but with minimal resistance on the journey, they arrived in good spirits at the secret entrance to the caves. The opening wasn't very large, just enough to get themselves and their equipment through. The entrance had burnt markings that surrounded the hole, said to be caused by lightning when the god Zeus threw down his lightning bolt, sealing the UnderGods in their cavernous tomb. A few occult scholars have differing opinions on the burn marks around the hole, believing the marks were caused when the UnderGods exploded back out the hole with a furious anger. The legend goes that the UnderGods sought help from the god Hades, the god of the underworld, and help from the Roman god Beelzebub, the demon god of shit and all unholy excrement. With the help from those powerful gods, the force they expelled from that hole was described to be like a Greek fisherman who ate tzatziki sauce that was left out under the hot Mediterranean sun for hours. The diuretic explosion that would follow would singe any hole, and that is the same force that blew through that hole, causing the small opening in the mountainside. That is why scholars and locals have dubbed the entrance the Tunnel of the Burning Anus. As Ravenscroft and his team made their way into the cave, they were immediately struck with a sense of wonder. The sheer size of the cave was enormous. The rumors were true. Only a place like this could be constructed by the gods. The walls were gold, the floors marble, and countless treasures filled the floor of the cave from wall to wall. The team had an ancient map of the caves to help lead their way, and up first was the hallway of the gods. If the legends were true, they should be walking upon a hallway filled with 2 rows of statues flanking each side of the hallway of the UnderGods. And to their relief, that's exactly what they came across. The hallway was massive, wide and tall. The statues were also massive, at least a few stories tall. Once again, something else that could be crafted by the gods, looking to be sculpted from the finest marble. They were just simply magnificent. Professor Ravenscroft and his team were mesmerized. All 100+ gods were lined up in their sculpted beauty. But the professor and his team were only interested in the UnderGods pertaining to the occult. Gods such as Poseidon, the god of Chaka rivers and oceans and keeper of sewers; Vaginas, the goddess of love and protector to the gate of life; Hemorrhoidus, the god of anal discomfort; Shittocrates, the god of knowledge; Hercanales, the god of strength; and finally the god of all gods, the mighty Anus, the ruler and father to some of the UnderGodian realm, also supposedly a cast-off from Mount Olympus and brother to the god Zeus. All statues to these particular gods of the occult were magnificent, and the professor was thinking of ways to excavate these statues, but they would need to be broken down and taken out piece by piece. They needed more people and better equipment. This would need to wait for a later time. They were hoping to find individual items that belonged to the specific gods on their lists, however, such as Poseidon's golden brown trident, from which he ruled the brown briny sea, and Vaginus's golden clam, the supposed door to all life. Also Hemorrhoidus's red golden mounds of pain, a real occult treat that would be in the collection. Then there's Shittocrates' brown abacus, Hercanales' warhammer, and buns of steel protector, and of course the mighty Anus's backdoor lightning bolt. Prized possessions that would look beautiful next to the previous occult acquisitions at the museum. Of course, the most prized possession was waiting for them at the top of Mount Olympus, a brown golden chalice of the gods, crafted by Hemorrhoidus himself, and believed to have touched the lips of every UnderGod, the chalice of Rectus Bliscus. The next room on the map were the halls of reflection leading to the treasure room of the gods. As the team walked, the professor thought how peaceful the expedition had been so far. Usually by this point, the team would be dead, and he would be fighting some ancient ass demon to the death. What a beautiful turn of events, he thought, as he exhaled a peaceful breath. The professor should have known better, however, because in this business, trouble can be waiting for you just around the corner. As they left the peaceful halls of reflection and approached the massive doors to the treasure room, they saw a golden bust and a large book waiting for them. The golden bust was of Shittocrates. He began to speak and told the team they could go no further if they could not answer correctly a series of questions. These were the legends of the hidden annals. A rumbling from the wall in front of them emerged, and a piece of the wall slid open, revealing a stone face of the deity Old Scat. He would ask the team questions and riddles pertaining to the histories of the gods. Every correct answer would unlock a lock on the door, but every incorrect answer would spell certain doom. The trials of Shittocrates had begun. The first question Professor Ravenscroft answered correctly, then another and another. This was turning into an easy trial of knowledge. Professor Ravenscroft was well adversed on the subject of the gods, and it was showing. Things continued going smoothly until the last question, when an overzealous student on the team answered a riddle incorrectly. What is layered with a paste of chopped nuts and chocolate stool, wrapped in a delicate phyllo dough? The student answered baklava, but they were incorrect. It was a droppings from the gods, baklava. A rumbling from the wall started, and a piece of the wall slid open. A row of stone anuses emerged and stared the team in the face. Professor Ravenscroft, with all his experience, knew whenever a bust or a statue of an anus emerged from a hidden compartment that good times were not to follow, and this looked like a sphinxter firing squad. He slowly stepped towards the back of the team and hid behind the bust of Shittocrates. Before he could tell the rest to take cover, a rumble emerged from the anuses, then an eerie silence. A thick green cloud emerged from the stone cheeks and moved its way over to the team member, who answered incorrectly, completely engulfing him. The rest of the team lost him in the green-ass fog, but they could hear him scream. After a few seconds, the fog disappeared, revealing only but a skeleton. The flesh had been melted away. The team scattered in horror, while the professor quickly asked for another question before the stone asses could fire another shot. He, of course, answered correctly, and the giant doors opened, revealing a cave of treasures, beautiful, wondrous treasures. All the items on the list were accounted for, except Poseidon's trident. If it's not here, it must be in the lost city of Craplantis's throne room, the professor thought. Oh well, onward and upward. The steps to Mount Olympus were not far now. All that was standing between the team and the steps was the river of the underworld, the river of the dead, the river Shits, and to get across, you needed to pay the ferryman. Specialized gold coins were given to the ferryman, which the team had collected in the Cave of Treasures. All but 2 members of the team were safely on the boat. The 2 members who weren't tried cheating the ferryman of his gold coins and pocketed them. They met their painful demise in the fudge sludge of the river Shits. Once safely across, the team was at the steps of Mount Olympus. With their collective excitement, they bounded up the steps with childish glee. Once at the top, they saw their prize, the golden chalice, Rectus Bliscus, staring them in the face. Professor Ravenscroft approached the altar carefully. As he got closer, cracks of lightning and loud roars of thunder filled the skies of Mount Olympus. Ravenscroft looked toward the sky and saw the ancient legendary winged horse, Pegasus, ushering the mighty god Anus to the top of the mount. Ravenscroft stood firm in the face of such godly power. Even when the god Anus evaporated the rest of the team with one thunderous clap from his cheeks, he stood firm, for the professor knew he was protected by his holy talisman, and on top of Mount Olympus he did battle with the mighty god. It was fierce and long, but the professor prevailed when he slew the mighty god Anus with his own backdoor lightning bolt. With his screams of defeat, the mountain and cave began to rumble and shake. The professor knew time was running out. He had to hurry before he was trapped inside for all eternity. He made his way back across the river Shits and back through the Cave of Treasures, taking with him the talking gold bust of Shittocrates, then through the halls of reflection and the hallway of the gods, then finally, with only moments to spare, out of the tunnel of the burning anus. Professor Ravenscroft escaping once again from the clutches of the dark realms of man, lives to explore another day, with more rare items of the occult to add to the museum's collection. Join us next time as he faces the Prowler. I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel for your overwhelming generosity. If you would like to support the channel, the link is below in the description. Also, please send me your stories and poems to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at Duchess.of.Darkness and Twitter at Duchess of Dark N2. I want to thank all my listeners for your kindness, your encouragement, and your support. It means the world to me. Thank you for joining me. Until next time.